all WDAS Classics 107.9. You can hear Rock Creek Park at least once a day on either one of those stations every day of the week. Did you guys know that this song was going to take off the way that it did?
Absolutely not. We didn't care anymore. After we wrote it, we were trying to write another song.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back aboard the Groove Line with your host Chris Stevens, and I have the privilege of being joined by Washington D.C. jazz funk, jazz fusion royalty right here. This is Mr. Keith Killgo. He is one of the founding members of the awesome Blackbyrds. He is taking time out of his day to talk to me, and I greatly appreciate it. So, Mr. Killgo, how you doing today?
Good. How are you? It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. So we're going to get right into it. So obviously, it's jazz and music has been in your family your entire life. Your father, Harry, was a pianist for a lot of different bands and groups, and he knew Donald Byrd before he was a professor at Howard. But when he came, how did that all come about? Because I read on the website that he said he wanted it to be like a field trip through the music industry. So how did the Blackbyrds actually form?
Well, originally, Donald was head of jazz studies at Howard University, and which is now the Chadwick Boseman Theater, Fine Arts. And he basically wanted to like take some young students out and give them a feel for what's real in the music industry. That's in terms of gigs, in terms of, travel, and, all the intricacies that when you're a college student, you have no idea. First of all, you have no money. You're eating, they didn't have oodles and noodles in those days, but the equivalent of oodles and noodles every day.
Yes.
And so it was like, whoa, yeah. So I was at Bradley University in Peoria, Illinois at the time, and I'd met Kevin Toney over the summer after I graduated from high school. And so there were some little local gigs, Ghani's Den down in Adams Morgan, that all the broke jazz musicians would go and play for free till 2-3 o'clock in the morning. We didn't care. So we hung out. And so Kevin said, okay, well, why don't you, just join the Blackbyrds? So, I said, well, okay. But before that, I'd met Don. I didn't know Donald. My father knew him. And we were playing at a place called the Left Bank Jazz Society in Baltimore. And I was playing with my dad's band with Marshall Hawkins, who eventually was playing with Roberta Flack and Miles Davis and those people. And my dad and Mike Fogarty, a young saxophone player. And Byrd we were all on the same show. And the way the Left Bank thing went is like on Sundays, you'd have an opening act. You might have like one year was like Aretha Franklin playing piano with a trio with Roger Humphreys and Chuck Rainey playing bass. And, Byrd had Reuben Brown, Keita Betts, and, all these cats playing on stage. And we were, of course, we were the rookies. So we were the opening act. With my dad. I have no idea what we played. I have no idea what any of it was. So it was like they were on break, and my dad said, "Well, you said you want to go to Howard, but there's Burns up there. Go say something." So I went over there and said, "Hey, man, my name's Keith Killgo, and I'm going to go to Howard." He said, "Oh, okay." He said, "So when?" I said, "Tonight." So by the time I'd gone to Bradley University for my first 2 years of college, well, before, just to preface that, I auditioned for a scholarship at Maryland University, and I didn't hear anything, and I was actually getting a few college offers or whatever, and so. I didn't see anything from Maryland. I said, I saw this from Bradley University, Illinois, and I'll bring you into the story how the universe works. And so I said, well, I'm going to Bradley. I didn't want to go Alpine State. I didn't know where that was in Texas somewhere. I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
Mhm.
So I, packed up my stuff. It was the first time I'd ever flown a plane. Ozark Airlines. That's how old I am. Yeah, exactly. To Peoria, Illinois, and uh, got there. In the Midwest, blah blah blah. Didn't know that this is where Richard Pryor was from. Ah,
Oh yeah.
okay. So I'll bring you full circle with that. So I get there, and the next day I get a letter from Maryland University. I got the scholarship.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was too late for all that.
Yeah.
So I went, man, I hung out with people like Sonny Sills and Malachi Thompson and Mujan Thomas, guitar player, great Curtis Robinson, tons of beautiful Charles Washington, beautiful musicians in Chicago, because basically Peoria is like about 90 miles, south of Chicago, down in that belt with the University of Illinois and Champaign and all that stuff. And so, I mean, it was cool. I got to play with some really cool jazz cats. And so I had Kevin come up for a couple of weeks just to hang out. They had a little, like club. It wasn't a club, it was like a restaurant. But we set up and played and so on and so forth. So he said, man, once you come back to Howard, man, you need to go to Howard. So I stayed up there for 2 years and I came back. And because I didn't register in August, at the time, the head of the fine arts department was Mark Fax. Mark Fax was the if you look up his history, he wrote some of the greatest Negro spirituals that known to mankind.
Yeah.
And his son Jesse Fax was the head of the radio station WHUR, and so. By hook or crook, and I can tell you hook or crook, they got me into school in October,
Mhm.
and so they didn't take all my credits. So I had to kind of figure that piece out, and what classes to take and so on and so forth. So that's when Bird decided to put together the band, because he'd already taken Kevin and Barney Perry and Alan Barnes. Alan Barnes is from Detroit, Kevin's from Detroit, and Barney was from who wrote Walking in Rhythm, is from Buffalo, New York. And so he had already taken them out on the road with Joe Chambers and Roland Wilson and Billy Harper and all these well-established jazz cats,
Right.
And it just didn't work. I mean, then Joe Chambers didn't want to do this and blah, 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 and everybody was, what are these young cats doing, man? They don't know, So you had old school, new school. So Bird fired all the old school and hired all of us.
Okay.
So Joe wasn't there yet. Joe Hall wasn't there yet. David Williams was playing bass at the time, and a percussionist by the name of Ray Amando. And so he'd gone out to Berkeley, California, and Perk Jacobs came later on in that piece, and cut a deal with Orrin Keepnews, who, by the way, was the producer. Well, he was the executive producer of 3 of my father's records with
Oh
a group,
wow.
with a group called the JFK Quintet,
Okay.
which was Andrew White and Ray Codrington, Walter Booker, Mickey Newman, and Billy Hart, Joe Chambers, Harry Killgo. They were produced by wonderful saxophonist by the name of Cannonball Adley. Okay.
Oh wow. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I've always been in the mix somehow, unbeknownst to me. Trust and believe it, had nothing to do with me. I just was in the right place at the right time. And so when we got out to Berkeley, California, first of all, it was my second time on the airplane. A lot of them was their first time. So we some country boys from DC, man. We got on hush puppies and long flannel coats, and man, we look a mess. Okay, like, what are these cats doing? And so that really began the whole process of understanding what this business is really about, and where do we fit in it. So Bird had cut a deal with Orrin to produce the Blackbyrds, but Donald hadn't produced nothing as a producer. I mean, he's a great jazz trumpeter and all about Coltrane and all that stuff. But he ain't really produced. He ain't know nothing about commercial music for real. But he was trying. Ethiopian Nights. He was trying to eke up there, but he still ain't quite get it. So he hired Sky High Productions. Sky High Production was Larry and Fonz Mizell. Larry was a student at Howard who was in the aerospace or some kind of ology, something beyond my pay grade. And and if you ever talk to him, he'll tell you exactly what it is. And Fonz was Bird's student, but Fonz wrote with a group called the Corporation. The Corporation wrote "I Want You Back" ABC for the Jacksons, for Motown. So Fonz was already in the business. That he kind of understood the matrix of the board and how to record and so anyway, long short, we record this first record, Crows in the Field, was really just called the Blackbyrds. And Bird calls me up one night, man, says, "Man, Killgo, man, I got this tune, man. I got this tune. Go, 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 go." Okay. Like, man, what is this, man? On the phone, he's singing this thing to me. And I'm like, okay, all right, whatever. So then he sends me this soliloquy of words and these kind of, it would be antiquated. It's still adequate. It was antiquated then. So it's definitely antiquated now. But it was what it was.
Yeah.
And so we recorded, but the process of the recording, man, was a challenge because none of me, I'd recorded one record before this. Fortunately, I played with Joe Henderson, and I played I sat in with Coltrane, with a lot of different people as a young drummer, but I didn't know anything about the business. I didn't know anything about recording, none of that stuff. I had no idea. So, and particularly commercial music. So, it's a whole nother animal. So anyway, we get it, we trying to get our stuff together. We go back to the playback and we're listening and we hear this doom, doom, doom. What in the hell is that? It was my bass drum.
Oh, wow.
It had nothing in it. It was just a drum head. And that ain't how you record commercial music, So it was the growth process, which was, I will cherish for the remainder of my life. That this was we were just such rookies at this. And it was so cool because it didn't matter, it was the learning process. So we recorded. Larry and them came in, and Jim Stearns was the engineer, and we recorded the Blackbyrds with "Do It Fluid," and it sold 125,000 copies in the first week. In 1973,
that's a lot of records
for a jazz cat. That's a whole lot of records,
Yes.
And so, but we were never in it for the recording or for the fame. That meant nothing to me personally. I was trying, as a drummer, I was trying to get a song on the record. I was trying to be a musician. People ask me, am I a drummer? I am not a drummer. I'm a musician. I played piano before I played drums, So I'm about chords and harmony, and that's my head, and I mean the drums, a lot of guys, they got all them, they can do all that. Fine. I just want to write the song you play that on, okay? And that works for me. And so the competition came in that, if you look at history, 7 musicians and a drummer, they always put the drummer at a different hotel because he had all the baggage to carry. We had we were still kind of in that phase, Right. And just quick backtrack on how the name came about. The name came about because Donald Byrd had recorded an album for Blue Note called Blackbird, okay, which was not written for him. It was written for Lee Morgan. Lee Morgan got killed, okay? And they had already cut all the tracks. And they said, well, we need somebody who can solo. They called Donald Byrd, of course, which was, needless to say, history was written there. And so we're sitting in the car coming up with names. They talked about Jimmy Lunsford and had a band in Alabama State called the Collegiates. And we was coming up. And I just said the Blackbyrds. And that's where it was born. in the back of a really, really old, raggedy Studebaker.
All right, so this is the 50th anniversary of the City Life album, which is
Yes.
you guys' biggest album to date. You guys were already 2 albums in by the time you guys get around to recording City Life. There's happy music on there. Of course, it starts off with a DC anthem. Now, I gotta know, how did Rock Creek Park come around?
Okay, I'm gonna say this for Joe, and Kevin, Orville, and who else was on there? But it was basically the core of the band. We were playing in New Jersey, and Camden, New Jersey. We were opening for the Commodores, and of course Donald would make us come to the gigs like before, just hours before anybody. They hadn't even cleaned the room up yet, you know. And we had labeled it Chicken Bone. I did Chicken Bone Alley, and because it was beer cans and chicken bones and stuff
All over the place, yeah.
And so we just got up on, on the stage, set up, what was the equipment that was there, and start jamming and playing around. I was fooling around on the bass, Joe was playing drums and whatever. And we came up with these grooves. We came up with happy music, and we came up with Rock Creek Park. Now, because we were all students, we all carried tape recorders. So they were called Super Scopes then. Marantz Super Scopes. Now I don't even know if they even make these things anymore. Hopefully not. And they were in big black bags, carrying them. But we carried them everywhere because we were on field trips. We were still students, so we recorded everything and so on and so forth. So we get back to DC. We play the raw tapes for Bird. He says, "Oh, perfect! In the studio, boom." We go. We cut the tunes, cut Rock Creek Park, we cut Happy Music. He sends us home. I'm like, well, no, before he sends us home, we're standing listening to the playbacks. And I say, doing it in the park, Rock Creek Park. I say that. I don't care what Joe Hall says. I love you, Joe, but I said it. And that's how it was born. And Joe lived right off of Rock Creek Park. I lived off of Rock Creek. Orville lived a couple of blocks. We all grew up in Rock Creek Park. And so it is our song. It's not my song, not there. It's our song because, Kevin's from Detroit, but Kevin knew Rock Creek Park because Kevin went to Howard. So he went to D.C. So he went to Pierce Mill. He went, so everybody wrote this song because it just felt right. Can't tell you where it came from, or nobody sat down and calculated, where are we going to write this? No. Wow, in Rock Creek Park, doing it. And that's how it was born. So then we cut the thing. Bird has Mary Clayton. Mary Clayton used to sing with the Raylettes, with Ray Charles. She's doing she's doing all that, the panting and sweating and carrying on there. Yeah. And that is how it was born. She's also, then they had Jim Gilstrap, who sang with Quincy Jones, Everything Must Change and all that. And Mary Clayton and Carl Caldwell sang the Happy Music. Now, I created the name of that song, Happy Music. Bird then came in and put in what he put in there. And that's how those two songs came about.
Did you guys know that by the time Rock Creek Park came out, that this was going to be the song that not only people remembered your band by, but it's one of the ones, because I'm from Delaware. I'm adjacent to Philadelphia.
Okay.
And all WDAS Classics 107.9, you can hear Rock Creek Park at least once a day on either one of those stations every day of the week. Did you guys know that this song was going to take off the way that it did?
Absolutely not. We didn't care anymore. After we wrote it, we were trying to write another song. it didn't, it wasn't like, okay, ooh, wow. Yeah, matter of fact, here in DC, there's a radio station called WOL, and they had a DJ by the name of Nighthawk. He's a good friend of mine, and I called him up. I said, "Hey man, we got a new album out. Would you play it?" And he said, "Well, I don't know." So I went to WOL, which was at the time was in Georgetown, And I took an album and I literally just stuck it under the door of the radio station. On my way home, he played Rockery Park.
Oh wow.
So I'm trying to tell you, man, it was just just a song we did. I mean, nobody really thought nothing. It was cool. Yeah, I mean, later on in years, people say, "Oh man, the drum solo." I mean, I ain't think about nothing like that. I was trying to write another song. I was trying to get more music on the record,
Yeah.
uh, and so and we were never, anytime that there was an awards, we were never there. We were always on the road. I mean, we didn't go to any of those kind of things because that's not what we were doing this for. We're doing it for the music.
Right. And I do have to ask you about another song in particular that you wrote that is my favorite Blackbyrd song. This is on the Action album. When I discovered Mysterious Vibes as a 20-something, like that song just spoke to me in a way that very few songs as a 20-something spoke to me. Like, is there a special story behind Mysterious Vibes, or was that just another one of those ones that you just wanted to get on the album?
No. So, we kind of started making a little couple of dollars. So, I finally got me a little crib, and put, and basically any place that I've ever lived and had nothing but drums and keyboards and guitars. I mean, because,
Yeah.
that was the furniture, uh, and so we were recording all the time. And I had written this tune. I had a TAC 8-track, man. I was, just trying to get my little engineering stuff on or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this tune, but it didn't sound like what you ended up hearing. It was a little different. The groove. I'd really love to really play you the original version of it. It was really interesting. But so we would have listening sessions, and Donald would have us play the songs. And I've always been spiritual, in my life. And so that's what the song is about. It's about that mysterious vibe that you can't see, but you can feel. It's in the air.
Ooh, see. And I've been trying to figure out. I mean, I literally been trying to find out the meaning of that song for 20 years, and you just broke it down for me in about a minute or so.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I think the part that gets me is, the drum intro from you is great, but who played the synth on that? Because I think I don't know if that's a bass synth or that's a bass guitar.
Which one? In the melody part?
Yeah, the melody part.
Yeah, that's Kevin.
Okay.
That was Kevin Tony. Yeah. And and so that was a cool thing about composing the music. It's your song until you introduce it to the band.
Right.
And then it becomes the band song because they put their stuff. Joe puts the bass lines on it, Orville the guitar, all that, and those things. And it just developed, again, just another song. I didn't really think that much of it. I know that it was a nice groove. I dug the groove. But I dug the message because that was the message. That was not us singing. That was Jim Gilstrap and the studio people singing. But then we re-recorded it in a more house version later on with Dave Lee in England, and added something a little different to it, a little different flavor to it. And Marshall Keys was playing saxophone, and a young man by the name of Sam Smith, who's no longer with us, was singing on it. And it turned into a really nice alternate, groove, maintaining the message. God's love is in the air,
And so my another question that I have is, you guys came along at a very interesting time in Black music spaces, because by the time you guys are doing, happy music, you guys are doing action, it seems like there is like a mass of black bands doing different types of music. I mean, you had Parliament Funkadelic, you had Earth, Wind and Fire. You said you opened for the Commodores, and then there's this thing called disco. You know, there's Casey and the Sunshine Band. There's MFSB out of Philly.
Mhm.
Like, were you guys inspired by that in competition, or were you guys just in competition with yourselves?
I mean, pretty much what happened, the band kind of disbanded a bit after Action. And the politics and all that piece, royalties and all the good stuff.
Yeah.
And so the music had changed a bit. Okay, so uh, I had nothing. I mean, KC and the Sunshine Band beat us out at one of those award shows. That's okay. Earth, Wind, and Fire. Of course, we were in the same. We were in the same booking agency with Kool and the Gang. We played with the New Birth. We played with the Ohio Players. We played with Parliament Funkadelic. We played with Jimmy Cast a bunch. I mean, we were in that, but all those bands were a little more R&B than what disco ended up turning it into.
Okay.
And so, MSFB and Dexter Wanzel and I knew all those cats as well in Philly. Of course, we know Leon Huff, Gambling Huff. We knew all of them because they were good friends with Larry and Fonz Mazel. It was hard to turn the corner musically because people expect, their expectations are not as, progressive as yours as a musician. So we kind of, after Action, it just kind of just sat there for a minute. And then I was able to negotiate a deal with Fantasy where we would self-produce for the first time. Was my first production company, Nevar Productions, and we co-produced that with George Duke. We had gotten some material from Kenny and Leon from Bell and James. We did a song called "Do You Want to Dance," and so they absolutely hated that record until time is a beast. I love it. Time's a beast. So I'd written a song with a friend of mine named Alvin Alexander called "Love Don't Strike Twice," and for some reason, that was the first single off of Better Days. I had written Better Days as well, but Love Don't Strike Twice. And there was another song in there, Don't Know What to Say. It was written by Orville Saunders. Okay. Years later, when we went to the listening party with the record label, and when it first came out, it was like, oh man, this is horrible. It sounded like 5 records or something. I'm like, well, man, we'd paid George Duke and Tommy Vicari and all those people that, Sheila Escovedo's on that record. Polino DaCosta's on that record, Jerry Hay and the Sea Wind Horns are on that record, So I don't think people understood what we were trying to crack through this hole here. And just the music business doesn't give you that, that people just don't get to see what you're struggling through or what you're trying to make happen. So of course I had added a lead singer, James Garrett, and the Blackbyrds, that ain't sound like the Blackbyrds till you listen to it. It's not the Blackbyrds of 1973. Absolutely not. It's the Blackbyrds trying to go into the 1990s. Right. And that's what Better Days is. It is a transitional record. And so there's some really good stuff on there. There's some really nice tunes. George Duke was a brilliant producer, man. You know how we go in the business. He made me mad about a lot of things, and I made him mad about a lot of things. And that's how the business go. Okay. Yes. And he know what he doing, and I kind of sort of know what I'm doing. So we had to come to some kind of agreement. But the record did get finished. It did come out, and it did what it did. 20 years later, people are playing. They got vinyl of don't know what to say. They got vinyl to extended play of Love Don't Strike Twice. So go figure. What didn't work here worked in England, worked in France, and in different places like that.
And so you guys kind of sort of, I guess, kind of split after that album, if I'm not, if I'm not completely wrong. And then you reformed the band later on. Just what made you come back to the you and Joe and Alan come back to the Blackbyrds?
We weren't done. It ain't over. Okay, yeah, I lost a fight. We've lost fights before. Talk to a boxer, man. He been knocked out. Got your butt whooped. Yeah, you did. Okay, now what? So we're gonna just give up. We're gonna throw the towel in, or we're gonna come back and regroup. And that was my whole piece. I'm coming back. I ain't scared. I mean, I'll do what I have to do. So I said I'm gonna do it. I did it. We started working at a club in London called the Jazz Cafe in 1999, which was a kind of piece of the band of the original members. Orville and Joe, of course, were always there. And then I had a young lady by the name of Janelle Gill playing piano. She's world renowned now, and Marshall Keys, saxophone, who's still playing with us to this day. And Alan hadn't come back yet, and so we started gigging. And the more we gigged, the better it was looking. And so I said, well, I'm going to go in the studio and record a record. So I had everybody, contribute whatever they were going to contribute to the record. And Alan did the Donald Byrd to me. He called me up and said, hey, man, I got this song. Doom, 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 doom. So, we trying, but that was actually the title of the record was Gotta Fly.
Yeah.
Written by John Malone, Alan Barnes, and myself. And I grew up, playing and knowing Donny Hathaway. So Someday We'll All Be Free is on that album. Um, I'm a old school hand dancer type dude, and so I wrote a song called Time to Celebrate. So pretty much, and then Joe wrote a song called Ride, and Orville wrote a song, you're the one. So everybody contributed to this album, which to me, to date, it didn't sell any records necessarily, but it was certainly fun to record. And there's some really, really good music on there, and I've introduced some young artists. I Need Your Love was I wrote the music, and the words were written by Paul Spires, who was my student from the 9th grade in high school. And he used to cut class in my room all the time. Like, man, you got the class in here. And so, no, man, if I write the words, we're going to record it. I said, no, when you write the words, I'll record the record. So he wrote the words, I recorded the record. So it's a starting point for a lot of things, from that point, having not recorded since that last record, since Better Days. And, right now, there's a record that we're playing in our live performance called Where Are You Going, which is a combination of Donald Byrd and Marvin Gaye.
Mm-hmm.
So we are presently, Kevin Tony passed 2 years ago, and his daughter Dominique is singing with us as well.
Okay.
We've added her to the mix, and man, we just got back from Japan a month ago. We did the Soul Train cruise, and I got to meet Jackie Wilson's son, which was amazing. And man, this is just the retirement part of this.
Right.
We're working with people like Tapa Carew. Tapa Carew was the executive producer for the Martin Lawrence show. Yeah, he's a personal friend of mine I've known for many years. And so we are just doing things, the way we do them. We're playing next month at the Funk Festival in Virginia Beach with Zap. And I remember remember we were in Ohio. It was at Dayton, Ohio, I do believe, and Cincinnati. It was Dayton. It was Dayton, and it was called Roger and the Human Body.
Ooh,
That, that was the name of the band before it was Zap. Okay,
okay.
yeah. Uh, and with mass production, and Angela Winbush comes on the night before us, and of course she, Angela is probably one of the reasons I passed my classes, because when they would play those crazy intervals on the piano and say, Mr. Killgo, write that on the board, I'd have to look at Angela and say, what is that? Because she she what it was. She says, this is a raised seven, oh no, you know. So with Tawatha Ag and Angela Ricks and Angela Winberg, we were all in class together with a
Wow.
brother by the name of Shelton Beckton. So it's a great experience, man. I'm about education. I take after Donald Byrd. Donald Byrd had 7 master's degrees in a variety of different subjects.
Wow.
And he was a very, very intense writer. He could write very, very well. And so I'm here only as a figure, and because I won't be here forever, to let man, that this is going to go on. It's not going to stop here. It shouldn't stop here. I'm encouraged that the young people that we do have in the group right now will not come back and redo Blackbyrds. They will create their own spot, because that's what Donald wanted. His legacy is not about recreating Art Blakey, because that's who he played with. His legacy is about recreating the next one, or the new one. And he always was reaching out. I mean, we did some stuff with Guru, and people like that. He was always trying something different. He was never afraid of the criticism that, he don't sound like he sounded when he played with Coltrane. He didn't care nothing about all that. He could care less. You guys were broke, so he didn't care nothing about that. He wanted to try to go make some money and do some stuff that was inspiring to him.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way, except for what I do is I want to teach young people, the fundamentals of this business. Had I known what I know now when I was in high school, I don't know. I'm sure I'd be in a different place, particularly about the business part, about the royalties, about intellectual properties, about copyrights, about all the things that protect you as an artist. Because when you are no longer able to perform, or something happens to you or whatever, you got to be taken care of. You don't want to be living
Yes.
some hole in somewhere, and whether your family comes in and steps in or not, whatever, all that, you straight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a life skills as well in this business. And so my nonprofit Arts for Kids is one that I'm, as I retire from teaching in school, this is my last year, I will go out on that venture to train young people how to train young people.
Okay. That's
You
awesome.
know,
So speaking of young people, you guys recently appeared on the front porch with Nucci, and how cool is that someone of like you said, you mentioned that young people sort of have the respect for the music. Just how cool was it for them to reach out to you and be able to give you guys that platform to let everyone know that DC music goes a long way back?
well, that's why you have young people in your band. It was because of Paul Spires. Ward 8, he went to Anacostia. He knew Nucci. They know they boys. And so we had just gotten back from Europe, and he said, man, Nucci said we could do it, on the front porch. I said, cool. So we met, it was because of Paul. And we got there, it was beautiful. I mean, these guys, man, they're professional to no end. Um, Never done that before. I kind of heard about, during COVID, people were doing, do it yourself at the home and on the back steps, but I didn't know exactly how intense this young brother is, and he knows a lot about the music business. Okay, so they have an audio video set up. It's his mom's house, and everything. And then, they come and they feed the artists, and we go out and you play a couple tunes, man. And, I don't know, it's like he got 600, 800,000 followers or whatever, and it was a liberating for us because we reached people who never even knew we existed. Or if they did, they didn't know who it was, and so I thank Nucci, man. Nucci is the bomb, number one. Number two, what a concept, and it's cost effective. It's at your house. It's on the front porch. I mean, come on, man. What you mean? I mean, it's just brilliant. It's just absolutely brilliant. And so I wish him nothing but love and the best, man, because he's brought a lot. He had George Clinton on there recently, so he is in single-handedly, in a way, bridging a lot of gaps, because you figure, I mean, in 1972, I graduated from high school in 71, that generations don't have no idea what this music is about. But if it were not for people like him and other people like yourself, who are, reading and researching and understanding what's going on, where all this stuff kind of comes from, then it would just die. It would just, vanish, and I just don't think that's cool, man. I think it's important to perpetuate and keep this thing moving. So congratulations to you. Congratulations to Nucci and all the people who have kept us alive. On the 50th anniversary, this company that's doing this, part of Concord Records that's doing this, man, they have a 600,000-700,000 following Instagram, so on and so forth. So we are being like reintroduced to people whose parents weren't born, let alone them. Right. In this phase, and I just think that's how we should go.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Keith Killgo, one of the original members of the Blackbyrds. Mr. Killgo, thank you so much for joining us. Tell everybody where they can find you and the Blackbyrds on the internet, like if they want to look up what you guys are doing, where you guys are going to be touring next and all that good stuff.
www.blackbyrdsmusic.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for this ride on the Groove Line. We greatly appreciate y'all for taking the time to rock with us as always. Contact information for Mr. Killgo and the Blackbyrds will be in the description below. Same for myself. Thank y'all for watching. And until the next time we ride, may the groove find you or you find the groove.